Hello, today I'll be talking about the game HeroQuest. This originally came out in 1989 is my understanding. The version that I have is from 2022. I think there's been a few other versions in between 1989 and 2022, and I know there's a UK version, older UK version and an older US version that had some rules differences. Um, and I don't know what all those differences are between those versions and this version from 2022, but this is the one I'm going to be going over how to set up and play. And even in that, the rules for this game have some vagaries where I'm just going to tell you, my best understanding of it. There's a companion app that I also tried out, and some of the ways that it does line of sight or what you see when you open a door is a little different than how I read the rules, so I'll just mention that when we get to it. But anyway, let's move on to how to set up HeroQuest. Alright, first thing you'll do is lay the board out on the table where all players can reach it. Next, you'll choose one player to take on the role of Zargon, the evil wizard, or evil sorcerer, and then the other players, however many you have, will play the heroes. There's in the base game, there's 4 heroes: barbarian, dwarf, wizard, and elf. So if you've got 5 players, one will be Zargon, and then one player will be each one of the heroes. If you have less than 5 players, you can split up the other heroes amongst the number of players you do have. It doesn't suggest playing with less than 4 heroes. You can, but it'll make the quests much harder. Now, if you're using the companion app, then that takes the place of Zargon the sorcerer. So then all the players can just play cooperative and use the app to take the place of Zargon. I'm going to go ahead and show how to play it without the companion app. So, as I said, one player will have to take the role of Zargon. The Zargon player will take this Game Master screen and place that in front of them, along with the quest book, and they'll turn to the first quest. Now, I don't want to actually show all of that first quest to give any spoilers, but I'll kind of show something about how they look. But they'll turn to the first quest and read and look at how the monsters and dungeon will be basically set up, though they don't at that time place any monsters or furniture and that kind of thing in the dungeon. In the quest book, for instance, in this first quest here, there'll be what's called the parchment text, which the Zargon player will read to all the players. Then there'll also be some notes down here in this section that Zargon will not read to the players. It will give notes of what to do when a hero searches a certain room and what they may or may not find there, as well as maybe what will happen if a certain character or something is found, what happens after that after that goal is reached. So just different things, but the only thing that's read out loud to the heroes is the parchment text up here. And then show the 4 hero character cards to the other players, and each of them will choose one character that they want to be, one hero that they want to be, or like I said, if you're playing with fewer than 4 hero players, they could play more than one. We're going to set up as if we have 4 hero players. You give each player one of these character sheets. Each hero player would get one of these character sheets, and they can come up with a name of their character and put what character type they had, dwarf, elf, wizard, or barbarian. And then they can write their starting stats that are shown on their character's card. For instance, attack dice 3, defend dice 2, body points 8, mind points 2. And they would write that on there. And then this is how they'll track what weapons and armor and their health, and if they gain gold and potions and other things as they search for treasure and complete quests. And as you'll see, there's 14 quests that come in the quest book. You'll play through them sequentially, and as your characters complete quests, you'll go ahead and circle the quests you completed. And you'll want to keep your character sheet with you because you'll carry your gold and potions and other items and weapons and armor that you've collected or purchased in between quests, and you'll always keep track of them on your character sheet and keep that with you through the whole campaign of the 14 different quests. I'm not going to go ahead and fill one of those out now for each of the characters, just for my how to play, but that's what you would do. You would give each character one of these and they would fill it out. You'll see on the character cards it tells you what your starting weapon and starting armor are, and those are taken into account by your starting attack dice and defend dice, and so forth. So you don't need to write. You can write that here, but you don't need to since that's your starting weapon on your card. I'm trying not to show this full quest map, but the Zargon player will look at the quest map and look where to put which room to put the starting stairs. That's the room the heroes will start in, and as we can see, kind of can see from this, which, like I said, I'm trying not to show the whole map. The you'll place this door and these starting stairs in this room right here. So we'll place this closed door right here and these stairs right here, and this will be the only room that you'll put anything out in for this particular quest. Other quests will have a different room being the starting room, but you don't place, even though the quest map shows the Zargon player how the entire dungeon is going to be laid out and all the monsters in it. He'll only place the stuff that goes in the starting room initially. And just to kind of show how that looks, I'm going to show a quest that is not a quest map that is not the starting one, and I won't say which one it is so players won't be spoiled by it, but I just want to show kind of how it looks. So this is like a quest map. As you can see, for this particular quest, the starting room would be up here, and you would put this door as closed. But all of these other things would not be revealed until players actually open those doors and go into those rooms or go out into these corridors, and then the Zargon player will reveal those at that time. And we'll see that a little bit more here in our playthrough, but I just kind of wanted to show how one of these maps might look. So all of this area of the map that just has the kind of red area, that is like solid wall and won't be used, can't be entered by the heroes. They can only enter rooms and corridors that are the more light colored here. So you won't use all of the board for every quest. Only a portion of it will be used. So once the stairway has been laid out, the players can go ahead and place their figures onto that stairway tile because that's where they'll be starting at. Like so. Now, just to mention, the figures in this game don't come painted. I just did my normal mediocre paint job on these. But anyway, you'll place your characters on the stairway. Next, you'll prepare your deck of cards. You'll take the treasure deck, shuffle that up, and just place it somewhere near the board where the hero players can draw from it. You'll give the artifact cards to the Zargon player, and he'll just keep those behind his Game Master screen. You'll spread out the 8 monster cards somewhere near the board so the hero players can reference these cards when they are fighting a monster and see how many movement and attack dice and defend dice and body points and so forth that they have. Now, all these monsters will not be in every quest. In fact, it may only be a few, one or two, maybe three types of these monsters will be in a quest. So the heroes won't know what kind of monster they'll run into until they actually run into one. And there may even be rules in a quest that you'll run into a character or a type of monster, but he's a special monster, and he'll have maybe one of these types of figures, but he'll have stats that may be higher or different than what are on the actual card, and the Zargon player will tell that to the hero players when they run into that monster or character. You'll take the Dread spell deck, give that to the Zargon player. He'll keep those behind his Game Master screen. Some of his monsters may or may not be able to use those Dread spells. He'll know that and use them when appropriate. It will say in the quest notes if the monster or something can use those. So they may or may not come into play, but those go to the Zargon player. Then in the base game, there are 4 groups of spell cards. You have air spell, fire spell, water spell, earth spell, and they each contain 3 cards. So these will be split between the wizard player and the elf player. So the way that works is the wizard player will choose one group first, so maybe the fire spells, and then the elf player will choose one of the remaining groups, so maybe they take the earth spells, and of course they can look at them and see what they are. And then the remaining 2 spell groups go to the wizard. And those can be picked however you see fit. It does say in the rules that if this is your first game, the wizard should take the fire, air, and water spells, and the elf should take the earth spells. But that's just a suggestion, not what you have to do. There is also an equipment deck, which you can just place nearby. Next, you'll place the 2 red dice and 3 combat dice somewhere within reach of the hero players. And the Zargon player will take 3 dice to place somewhere near him. You can give each hero player one of these player aid cards. And then there's some tokens with walls and monster damage and stuff that you'll want to place somewhere near the Zargon player. And that is pretty much all that's needed for setup. So we've got our barbarian player, dwarf, elf. It does state in the rules you can set in whichever order you want. The player to the left of the Zargon player will go first and then go in clockwise order after that. And it does suggest for your first game that barbarian go first, then the dwarf, then elf, and then finally the wizard. But you can sit in whichever order you want. But it will be player to the left of the Zargon player will go first and then go in clockwise order after that. Alright, let's move on to how to play. Alright, so how do we play? As I mentioned, the Zargon player would read the parchment text to all the heroes, and then that gives them kind of the goal of what they need to do, and then heroes begin with the player, as I mentioned, to the left of the Zargon player, and they all go in a clockwise order. Once all the hero players have taken their turn, then the Zargon player gets to go, and any monsters that have been revealed, the Zargon player can then move and attack with those. Let's talk first about what a one of the hero players can do on their turn. They can move and then perform an action, or they can perform an action and then move. But they can't move part of their movement, perform an action, and then continue their movement. So they either have to move first and do an action, or do an action and then move afterwards. So let's talk about movement. So when a hero moves, they'll roll the 2 red dice. The total that they roll, in this case 8, is the total movement they have for that turn. They have to move orthogonally. In this case, the barbarian is first. This staircase counts as 1 space, so he can come off of any of these spaces for his first movement. So he could go 1, 2, 3. Now, this is a closed door. The hero player can ask the Zargon player to open the door. That doesn't count as an action. So if he asks him to do that, then the Zargon player just removes the closed door and replaces it with an open door. Then anything that's visible in the hero player's line of sight, that is revealed. Now, that's the way I read it in the rules, that anything in the player's line of sight, which is described as from center square outwards. Anyway, I'll show you in the rule book later a little bit more when we're talking about line of sight. But to me, in the rule book, it seems like if the barbarian moved here and asked Zargon to open the door, it would only reveal like maybe these 3 tiles. But when you're using the companion app, in this case, if the barbarian opened the door, it reveals this entire corridor, along here. So I'm not sure which one is right. I guess you have to go with what's the companion app, but I don't know. You may house rule it that they can only see what would be visible looking out that door. I guess the companion app is going with the idea that the barbarian is like leaning out and looking up and down and seeing up and down the corridor. The rules in the book that I have said looking gives you the opportunity to see what is directly within your line of sight. So, as I said, I would probably just think if he was looking out this door, it would be these 3. But, as I said, the companion app would reveal this whole corridor. But anyway, if you have Zargon open the door, then you continue your movement. In this case, I had only moved 1, 2, 3, and I rolled a 9, so I could come out here 4. Then, at that point, I would definitely say the Zargon player could reveal the entire corridor once you're in the hallway, because you could be looking back and forth. And that's what the Zargon player would do. So, for example, if you moved into that corridor or peeked out that door, the Zargon player may put a piece of wall here, meaning this corridor ends at that point. You can't see or walk further down the corridor than there. They may say, there's a closed door right here that you can see. And then you can continue your movement. Now, if there was maybe a monster in the hallway, the Zargon player would then place that. So, for example, maybe on the quest map, it showed that there's a goblin right here. So that would get placed when you walk out into the hallway or when you look out the door, whichever way you want to play it. But then you can continue your movement. So that was 4, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you could ask, when you got to that place, you could, if you wanted to, you could ask the Zargon player to open that door. And that would reveal everything. When you open a door going into a room, it reveals everything in that room. Monsters, chests, furniture, whatever. But that may not be a good idea because there could be several monsters in there plus one out here. So you may not want to open it until maybe you've taken care of this one here. I think this was 9. So you don't have to move the full amount that you roll. You can move up to that amount, but you don't have to move that full amount. So again, with movement, you can only move orthogonally. You cannot move diagonally. You can't move through walls. These white lines are walls. Now there is one of the spells actually does allow a character to move through walls. but that's a special rule. But normally you can't move through walls, or if there's like a blocked tile like that, that means that's just a solid wall. You can't move through it. So you can only move into rooms through doors. And normally all doors will start closed. You have to open the door, and as I said, once you do, it reveals everything in that room. And so for an example for that, we could say maybe the barbarian player did stop here and tell Zargon to open that door. So the Zargon player would remove the closed door, again, replace it with an open door, and now he would place anything that his quest map shows in that room. So for example, maybe there's a chest over in this corner, maybe a bookshelf right here, and maybe an orc here, and maybe an orc over here. Alright, so everything in that room would be revealed when you ask Zargon to open that door. Now the barbarian only has one movement left, so he couldn't get to any of those monsters at this point. So he could continue moving here. Some other rules of movement is you cannot move through a monster. So even if you had additional movement, you would have to stop adjacent to it. You can't move through it, though you can move through other heroes, friendly heroes, and monsters when they're moving can move through other monsters, but they can't move through heroes. So you can move through another hero, but you can't stop in the same space as a hero. The only exception for that is, for instance, the stairs there. There's one other space where heroes could be in the same space as each other, and that's a pit trap. So if two heroes fall in a pit trap, they could both be in there, but otherwise you can't occupy the same space. Alright, so that pretty much covers movement. As I said, on a player's turn, a hero's turn, they can move and take an action, or take an action and then move. So we've talked about movement, now let's talk about the possible actions. So normally when a hero attacks, they can attack a monster that is adjacent to them. Now, adjacency for attacks is only orthogonal. So if this goblin was here, the barbarian could not attack him. He can only attack in these spaces. So he could attack him here, 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 or here, but not here. Now, there are some weapons you can get later that do let you attack diagonally, and there's some weapons that give you ranged attack, which you can use anywhere within line of sight. For example, like maybe the crossbow, but with the crossbow you can't attack an enemy that's adjacent to you, but you could attack as long as the enemy was in your line of sight. But the standard attack is what we'll go over here. So if you're adjacent to the enemy, you can attack, and the way you attack is you roll the number of dice specified on your weapon. And so for the barbarian, he's equipped with the starting weapon of broadsword. He gets 3 attack dice. So he would get to roll these 3 dice, and that would be a terrible roll for him. When you roll the attack dice, what constitutes a hit is a skull. And so if like the roll I just got would just be a miss, the goblin would not even need to try to defend. But we'll say, for example, maybe I got one skull. So the goblin, or whatever monster you're attacking, then gets a chance to defend, and they get to use their number of defend dice. So for the goblin, you can see here, they have 1 defend die. So the Zargon player would roll for them, and in that case, they actually successfully defended. So this is a 6-sided die. There's only one shield with this symbol. If the monster players roll that symbol, then they block 1 hit. So if the Hero player got 2 hits, and the Goblin player managed. They only get 1 defend dice. If they rolled that, they managed to block 1. They would still take 1 hit. And you can see that a goblin has only 1 body point, so it only takes 1 body point, or 1 point of damage to kill them. So if that was the roll, and even if he blocked 1, he would still take 1 hit, so he would be removed. You can see the orcs have 2 defend dice, so they would actually get to roll 2 dice to defend. In that case, they wouldn't have blocked anything, so they would take 2 points of damage. The orcs only have 1 body point, so the orc, if he was attacking an orc, the orc would be killed. Now, if you did 2 points of damage and the orc got lucky and rolled 2 of these shield symbols, then he would block them both and take no damage. And monsters attacking the heroes works in a very similar manner. So if the goblin was attacking the barbarian there, you could see he gets 2 attack dice, so he would roll 2. Just like the heroes, the skulls are hits. So if he did roll a skull, in that roll he didn't, but if he did, he would score 1 hit. So the barbarian would get to roll his defense dice. If you look right now, he's got 2 defend dice, so he would get to roll 2. And this shield for the heroes blocks hits from monsters. So he would block 1. He only got 1 damage, so he would take no damage. So let's look at this. There's 3 skulls on a die, and then there are 2 hero shields, hero defense blocks, but only 1 monster defense, block symbol there. So the heroes have a little bit better chance of blocking an attack than the monsters, but they each have a 50% chance of scoring a hit on each die. Now, if you're like the wizard or the elf, I mentioned they have some spells that can do ranged attack. They have to have line of sight to the creature they're attacking. So, the wizard here would not be able to cast a spell on this goblin because the barbarian blocks his line of sight. Casting a spell is another action, so we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I just wanted to mention that so we could talk a little bit about line of sight, which you need for ranged attacks. So to talk about line of sight, I think the easiest way is just look at this example they give in the book. The elf here has line of sight to all these with solid lines. So even though now a closed door will block line of sight, so that's why he doesn't have line of sight to this orc. But this door is open, and if you draw a line from center square to center square over here, it can pass through one corner, so it allows him to have line of sight to this orc. Because this door is open, he has line of sight to this orc, he has line of sight to this orc. Because this orc only passes through one corner of a wall, he still has line of sight. He doesn't have line of sight to this orc because it's blocked by the wizard. It does show he has line of sight to this orc because it just passes through this one corner. But he does not have line of sight to this orc because from the center square to this center square, it passes through 2 walls. So it says he does not have line of sight. And of course, this is a closed door here, so that blocks line of sight. As with most games that have similar line of sight rules, there's usually some sort of argument about what constitutes a line of sight, or what's from one center square to another center square. One kind of tool you can use is something like this, a laser pointer, which kind of lets you do from a center of one square to a center and see what it passes through. So I use this for several types of games, but that's something you can use, or a string, or you can just use your best judgment. In the end, it's your game, so you can determine the best way to determine if if somebody has line of sight to an enemy. And as I mentioned, the line of sight only comes into play with ranged weapons or spells, which we'll talk about here in a little minute when we talk about the cast a spell action, because most attacks are, you have to be adjacent to the monster, or the monster has to be adjacent to the hero that it's attacking. Alright, so there's the attack action, which I mentioned. Another one I've mentioned a few times here is the cast a spell action. The heroes, the elf and the wizard have a deck of spell cards. Let's just look at a couple of them. We'll look at this fire spell that the wizard could cast. So maybe if he's in this room, he's got line of sight to both these orcs. He could cast this Fire of Wrath spell. Most spell cards, you just read it. They say exactly what they do. So this one says this spell may be cast on any one monster. Blasting it with flames, it inflicts 1 body point of damage, unless the monster can immediately roll a 5 or 6 using a red die. So, if the wizard said he's casting it on that, the monster would get to try to roll. In this case, got a 6, so he would not take the 1 body point of damage. In any case, whenever a spell is cast, it's only used once, and it's discarded. The player does not have use of that spell again for the rest of the quest. So all their spells are a one-time cast, and then they can't be used again for the rest of that quest. And so again, if you're casting a spell on an enemy or a friendly unit, you have to have line of sight to that hero or monster that you're casting on. There's some you can, like heals, that you can cast on yourself as well. Of course, you've always got line of sight to yourself. So that's the action, cast a spell. Next type of action is search for treasure. So if a hero uses a search for treasure action, you can only do that in rooms. You can't do that out in corridors. You can only do it in a room if it's uninhabited by monsters. So, for instance, the wizard here could not, for their action, search for treasure because there are monsters in there. But, the dwarf could search for treasure in this room. And to search for treasure, you just announce to the Zargon player you're searching for treasure. And so when you're searching for treasure, you're basically searching the whole room. You don't have to be adjacent to anything to search. You're just basically searching the whole room. So when you announce to the Zargon player that you're spending your action to search for treasure, the Zargon player will check his quest notes. He may have some quest notes, like if this treasure chest was in here, he may have a quest notes that says for that treasure chest, the first person that searches for treasure in that room, they find 60 gold in that chest, and then that chest is now empty. So the next person that searches for treasure in that room would not get the same, not get to take the treasure that's in that chest. It would only be for the first person. So that's only if there's some quest note for the Zargon player to say. If there's no note, nothing special for the in Zargon player's quest notes, then when you search for treasure, you just draw the top card from the treasure deck. The treasure deck can give you good things like gold coins or helpful potions or something like that, but nearly 50% of those cards are bad things. So we'll just look at the top one. We'll say the dwarf, for his action, searches for treasure. So he looks at the top card. Now this one happened to be good. So it says you find loose stone and tear it from the wall. Behind it you discover a small leather pouch wrapped in an old rag. Peering inside you find 25 gold coins. Record the money on your character sheet. Do not return this card to the deck. So you would take your character sheet and add 25 gold coins. If that's your first gold coins you've collected, you would just put 25 in there. If you'd already collected maybe 60 before that, then you erase that or scratch that out and put 85. And so you always keep track of how much gold you have. And then this would just be discard. It says it doesn't go back in the deck. Now the bad things, there may be a wandering monster, may say a wandering monster appears, and the type of monster that is, the Zargon player, it will say on his quest notes what type of wandering monster appears. When a wandering monster appears, it gets placed right next to the person that did the search and immediately attacks them. Um, and then, or there could be hazards, spikes or something that come out of the wall and do some damage to you. All the bad things go back in the treasure deck. All the good things, once you have them, they go either just discarded after you've recorded it, or if it's a potion or whatever, you can keep it next to you or just record it on your character sheet and then discard it to be used in the next quest. It won't be used in the current quest. All right, but back to searching for treasure. So each room can be searched once by each character. So the same character can't search a room twice, but all 4 characters could search for treasure in one room. But again, as I mentioned, if there's a special note for a treasure in that particular room in the quest notes, only the first player that searches that room gets that note read out loud and gets whatever that treasure may or may not be. Everyone else would just draw a treasure card. As I mentioned, any of the bad treasure cards go back into the deck, and the rules do say that the treasure deck gets shuffled before a player draws a card for the treasure deck. So to me, that means that every time somebody's going to draw from the treasure deck, you have to shuffle it first. All right, I think that pretty much covers the search for treasure action. Next possible action you can do is search for secret doors. And you can do that in a room or a corridor. So secret doors are not revealed just by looking into a room or corridor. So normally when you open a door and look into a room, the Zargon player will place any monsters or furniture or any regular doors that may be in that room. Or when you come out into a corridor, the Zargon player will place any monsters or doorways that you might see down the corridor. But secret doors will not be revealed that way. The only way that you will find a secret door is by taking your action and telling the Zargon player, I'm searching for a secret door. Now you can't search for secret doors if there are any monsters visible to you. So that's a little bit different than searching for traps, because searching for traps you can only do in a room, and you can only do it if there are no monsters in the room. But if, for instance, this monster was out here and this monster was not in this room, the wizard here could still search for traps because the room is uninhabited by monsters. But he could not search for secret doors. Even though the room is uninhabited by monsters, he still has a monster visible to him. So you can't search for secret doors if there is a monster visible to you. So if this guy was down here, like out of line of sight, then in my opinion, as I said, though the rules are a little shaky on what you can see outside of a door, but in my opinion, if this monster was down here, you could search for secret door, because I don't think he would be visible to this wizard. But anyway, that's open to interpretation. However, so the rules state as long as a monster is not visible to you, you can search a room or a corridor, not just a room like a treasure. It could be a corridor, for secret doors. If there is one, then the Zargon player will place a secret door tile where that secret door is, like maybe if that secret door is right here, and that would lead into this room. If you said I'm searching for secret doors and there was one, then the Zargon player would place that tile there. Now, it's not automatically open, but just like with any other door, once you stand adjacent to the door, and say I'm opening the secret door, then the Zargon player would place any contents that are in that room and make it visible to you. Alright, that covers searching for secret doors. Next we have search for traps. Alright, so there's various kind of traps that can be found in both rooms and corridors. You got pit traps, falling block traps, spear traps, and chest/furniture traps. So if when you're moving, you move into a space that contains a pit trap or a falling block trap or a spear trap, you trigger it. Or if there's a piece of furniture or a chest in a room, then you search for traps and you haven't already found and disarmed that trap, then you could trigger that trap as well. So one of the ways to not trigger a trap is to actually search for the trap, and then there's another action later, disarm trap, but we're going to talk first about searching for traps. So on the Zargon player's quest map, he will have locations that are marked on his quest map that show where different various types of traps may be, or there may be none. You just don't know. So when you are in a room or a corridor, you can take the action and say you announce to the Zargon player that you're searching for traps. And similar to searching for secret doors, you can't search for traps if there is a monster visible to you. But as long as there's no monster visible to you, you can search for traps. You announce that to Zargon. And then the Zargon player will say either, there is no traps, or if there, say there was a pit trap on this square, the Zargon player will announce, he'll point to the square. He won't actually put a tile on there at this time. But for instance, if it's a pit trap, he'll point to the square and say, the floor looks weak here. So then you know that there's a pit trap there. So you can, in the future, if you can try to jump over that spot if you need it. This probably makes more sense in a corridor. If he said there's a pit trap here and you need to get up that way, you can attempt to jump over a trap, and we'll talk about how to do that in a minute. Or you can attempt to disarm the trap. So disarming a trap is a separate action that you can do, and jumping over the trap you would do when you're moving. If you didn't search for the trap and the trap was here and you walked onto it, as soon as you step onto it, then like if it was a pit trap, the Zargon player would stop you, put the pit trap there, put you in it, and then you take the consequences for that trap. There's usually, depending on the trap, you take some kind of damage. In a pit trap, you have some penalties to your combat rolls. I'm not going to go over the details of the penalties of each type of trap, but I just wanted to mention, that's what happens if you just step onto a trap without searching and disarming it. So as I said, if you said you're in this corridor and you said I'm searching for traps and there was one here, and it was a pit trap, the Zargon player would say this spot looks weak, then you know there's a trap there. So let's talk about jumping over a trap. Now that's not another action, that's just if you're moving and you know there's a trap here, you can try to jump over it. Now to jump over a trap, you have to have at least two movement left. So if you had if the trap was here and you had rolled a 5, you could move here, that's 1. Then you need at least 2 to jump over that, 1 to jump over that tile, and 1 to land on the next one. So, that would be 2, 3, and that would leave you with 2 points of movement if you successfully jump it. So, the way that you jump it is you take a combat die, roll it. If you roll anything but a skull, then you successfully jump over it. If you roll a skull, then you land on the trap and spring it and take whatever kind of damage it is, depending on the type of trap it is. So you have about a 50% chance of jumping a trap. Alright, the other type of option you have instead of jumping the trap is disarming the trap. But as I said, that is another possible action, the final possible action actually. So if you're going to disarm the trap, if you're any of the heroes except the dwarf, you have to have purchased a toolkit from the equipment, which you can, we haven't talked about that yet, but in between quests you can spend your gold and that you've accumulated to upgrade your equipment. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but to disarm a trap you have to have a toolkit. So if you're any character other than the dwarf has an innate ability of disarming traps, so they don't have to have a toolkit. So if you do have a toolkit, if you're any other hero but the dwarf and you do have a toolkit, you announce before you move that you're going to disarm the trap, and then you'll move on to the space that you know has the trap. And again, if you have the toolkit, then you can roll one combat die. If you get a skull, then you still spring the trap and suffer the consequences of that trap. If you roll one of the shields, then you successfully disarm the trap and it's no longer there. So again, you have a 50-50 chance, even if you have a toolkit, to disarm the trap. If you're the dwarf, as I mentioned, you don't have to have the toolkit. You still have to announce before you move that you're going to try to disarm the trap. You move on to the trap space, roll a combat die, and that is the only one that will make you spring the trap. So if you roll the black shield like I just did, which there's only one, so it's a 1 in 6 chance that you'll do that, then you spring the trap and suffer the consequences of that trap. Any other roll, a skull or one of the white shields, you successfully disarm the trap and it's no longer there. So those are all the possible hero actions: attack a monster, cast a spell, search for treasure in a room you're in, search for secret doors in rooms or corridors that you're in, or search for traps, or disarm a trap. Alright, so as I said earlier, a hero can move and then do one of those actions, or does one of those actions and then moves. Once all the heroes have taken their turn, then the Zargon player takes their turn, and the Zargon player will, when it's their turn, any monsters that have been revealed on the board, they move those monsters in whichever order they want to. Now, monster movement is not the same as hero movement. The monsters don't have to roll a die. They just have a number of squares they can move listed on their card. And also this shield that the Zargon player has lists all the same stats that are on those monster cards are right here for the Zargon player, so he knows how far each type of monster can move and their attack dice, defend dice, and so forth. And he's also got player aids for hero's turn and monster's turn and combat. And as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about movement, monsters move similar to heroes. They can move through other monsters, but they can't move through a hero character. Monsters do not spring traps or open doors, so they can move over a trap space, but they can't open a door to move through it. Now they can move through a door that's already been opened by a hero. So the Zargon player will move and attack with any monsters that are visible on the board, and I've already talked about how they attack. They roll dice similar to the heroes, and then the heroes defend. We've talked about all that earlier when we were talking about combat. So the Zargon player will do that with any monsters that he wants to. He doesn't have to move or attack with all his monsters. That's up to him, but he can move or attack with the ones that are visible that he wants to. Um, if one of his monsters is capable of casting a dread spell, then he can do that with the dread spell cards. And so, after Zargon moves and attacks with any monsters that he wants to and is capable of, then we start back over with the hero's turn again, starting with the hero to the left of the Zargon player. So let's talk about what happens if a hero is killed. So if a hero ever takes damage equal to their body points, so as the heroes take damage, they'll keep track of that on their character sheet. So characters will put their starting body points here, and then as they take damage, like if the barbarian's starting body points is 8, so he would write that there. Then if he took 2 points of damage, then he might write a 6 here, and then if he took another point of damage, he would write a 5 here. So they track their damage here on this body points track. If a hero ever reaches 0 body points, then they're killed. Now, if your hero reaches 0 body points and they have a healing potion, they can immediately drink that before they die, or if they are able, or if they're have a spell that they can cast to restore some health, then they can cast that before they die. But otherwise, once you reach 0, then your hero is dead. So if your hero dies, you just remove your character. You can, in a future quest, create a new character, but that character that you had is dead. Any armor you had purchased or weapons you had previously purchased or treasure you had is dropped in the corridor or room that you are in. If there is another hero in that same corridor or room that you are in when you die, they can pick that up. If there is no other hero or if there is no other hero in the room or corridor that you're in when you die, and there's a monster in that room, then it just picks up that equipment, and so it doesn't use it, but basically it's lost then at that point. Monsters, when they die, are just removed from the board, and the next time a monster needs to be placed of that type, that same figure can be placed back on the board. And that pretty much covers it. The quest normally ends when you've completed some goal that was given to you when the Zargon player read the parchment notes to you. Like normally you have to kill a certain named monster or find a certain character. But the quest normally is not over when you kill that monster or find that character or whatever it is you have to do. You normally have to make it all the way back to the stairs, and then the quest is over. So it's not as easy as just finding and killing the creature. You still have to make it back out alive in most cases in order to complete the quest successfully. And then usually there's some reward that's given to you for completing the quest successfully. And as I've mentioned previously, in between quests, you can visit the armory, take the equipment deck, and purchase other weapons and armor and potions and stuff that you see here. They have a cost down here, and they tell you, who can wear them like this or use them. This battle axe may not be used by the wizard. It costs 450 gold. Now, when you buy these, you don't actually take the card out of here. So all these, there's a toolkit we talked about for disarming traps. All these weapons and armors are always available. When you purchase one, you just write on your character sheet that you have that, And if it gives you some new stats, like this one allows you 4 combat dice instead of whatever you had previously. So you'll write that all on your character sheet, and then the card just stays here, so another character can purchase, that same type of weapon or armor or potion, and these can always be referenced. And when you're visiting the armory, the characters can pool or share their gold. So, if one character got 100 gold and another character had 200 gold and another character had 150 gold, and they want to buy, the battle axe for the dwarf, then they can pool their gold and spend it to get that axe. So it's not, each character isn't limited to just spending the gold that they have. They can share their gold. It allows them to purchase something more expensive for one of the characters. All right, I think that about covers it for the most part. As I said, I didn't go into every detail for every type of trap and how you and the damage for every type of trap and the effects of every type of trap. But for most other things, I think I covered them. So why don't we? I'll just set up a sample starting quest that I'll make up and just go through a few example turns. Alright, so we'll say our heroes start in this as the starting room. The only thing they know is there's a closed door here and they're in this room, and then maybe the Zargon player read to them the parchment text that there's some named abomination monster with some, I don't know, some name Koodly Koo or something that they have to find and eliminate and then make it back to the stairs. So that's all they know. And if they do that, maybe they get a reward of 400 gold or something like that. So the player to the left of the Zargon player is the barbarian. He would go first. So we'll just say he's going to roll his movement die. He gets a 7. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. He says, I want to open this door. So the Zargon player would place the open door here. And then, as I said, according to the companion app, would pretty much reveal anything in this corridor here. So we'll say maybe he sees a closed door here, and then there's a wall right here, so that means you can't move or see down this way in the corridor. So he's only moved 4. He rolled 7, so he has more movement. So 5, 6, 7. All right. He could, for his action, say he's going to search for secret doors, and that would be in this corridor, from here to here. And the Zargon player says there's none. Alright, he's done his movement and his action, so that's all he can do. So now it's the dwarf player's turn. He'll roll. He gets a 7 as well. So the dwarf's going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He can't land in the same space as the barbarian, so he'll just stop, and maybe he says he knows the barbarian already searched for secret doors, so maybe he says he's going to search for traps. And for this example, we'll say maybe the Zargon player has on his quest map that there is a falling block trap here. So he says the ceiling looks weak here. So now the hero players know that there is a falling block trap here, and they'll either have to try to jump over it or disarm it to go by that if they want to get around this corridor. Alright, but that's the dwarf's turn, so now we go on to the elf's turn. Have them roll, they just get a 4, so they go 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're going to search for treasure. So the Zargon player doesn't have any notes of any special treasure in there. So then the elf player will just draw, we'll just say this is the beginning of the game, so the treasure deck's already been shuffled, so they draw the top card. and they got some gold. They got 15 gold coins. So they would write that on their character sheet. As I said, I'm not going to use a character sheet here. But they would write on their character sheet they got 15 gold, and then this doesn't go back in the deck, so it would just get discarded there. Alright, so they aren't capable of searching this room again for treasure, though any of these other characters could have also searched that room for treasure. Each character can search any room for treasure one time. Alright, so finally it's the wizard's turn. We'll see what they got. They got an 11. So they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, they almost made it to that door. And there's no point in them searching for hidden doors or traps, because that's already been done by the other players. They know there's a trap here, and they know there's no hidden doors. So there's really not an action for them to take. So they'll just end their turn. Now it would be the Zargon player's turn, but the Zargon player has no monsters that have been revealed yet, so there's really nothing for the Zargon player to do on their turn. So his turn just ends with no actions, and now we would be back to the Barbarian's turn. So the Barbarian will roll the dice, and they got a 7 again, so they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'll say to the Zargon player, I want to open this door. So the Zargon player would remove the closed door with an open door, and then reveal anything that's in that room. So maybe there's a table and a goblin and an orc revealed in that room. Now the Barbarian still has 2 movement left, so he's going to move 1, 2, and move adjacent to this goblin, and then he still has his action, so he's going to do an attack action against that goblin. So we know the Barbarian gets to roll 3 attack dice. He got 3 skulls. The goblin only gets to roll 1 defend dice, so even if he rolled 1 successful defense, he would still have 2 hits, so there's no point in him even rolling for defense because he only has 1 body point, so he's going to be dead. So he's just automatically dead. We'll remove him, just put him over to the side of the board. But that's going to end the Barbarian's turn because he moved and did an action. So now we move on to the Dwarf. The Dwarf is going to roll to see, he's going to move, he's going to roll to see what he can get. 9, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, so he's going to move. He's going to announce that he's going to go disarm that trap. He has enough movement to get there, so he announces he's going to go disarm the trap. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's where the trap is. And now he's going to try to disarm it. We know because he's the dwarf, he has the innate ability, so he doesn't have to have a toolkit. And he'll roll 1 dice, and as long as he doesn't get the black shield, he successfully disarms it. So he does successfully disarm it, so there's no longer a trap there. But now he's taken his turn, his movement, and his action. So now it's the elf's turn. They're going to roll and see what they get. They get a 7 as well. Should be playing craps. I'd be doing well. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They can't move that 7th one because they'd be in the same space as the wizard. And they can't occupy the same space. So there's not really an action for them to take now. There's no point in, you can't search for treasure in a corridor that's already been searched for traps and secret doors, so there's really nothing for them to do. So now we go on to the wizard. Alright, the wizard's going to roll. They got a 7 as well. Boy, I'm just rolling nothing but 7s. Alright, so maybe they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they're going to do a cast a spell on that orc. So maybe they're going to cast this air spell, Tempest. This spell creates a small whirlwind that envelops one monster of your choice. That monster then misses its next turn. So they cast that on the orc there. So that quest is now, or that spell is now discarded. They won't have that for the rest of the quest. The monster is in their line of sight, so there's nothing else to do. But now on the Zargon's turn, they won't be able to move or attack with that orc because it's caught up in a whirlwind. That does end the hero's turns. It's now the Zargon player's turn, but the only monster they have available is that one that that has to miss its turn. So the Zargon player won't be doing anything this time. So now we're back to the hero's turn again. It's the barbarian. So the barbarian will roll. They got 10. They're only going to move 1, 2. And then they're going to use their action to attack this orc. So they'll roll their 3 combat dice. They got 3 skulls. He's having good luck. The orc only can roll 2 defend dice. So even if he got successful defense on both those dice, he would still take 1 hit because the barbarian got 3. And he's only got 1 body point, or this one's actually a she. So they'd be defeated. There's no way they can live with 3 hits on them. So there's no point in them rolling their defense. They're just automatically defeated. And that ends the barbarian's turn. Alright, so it's the dwarf's turn. We'll have them roll. They got a 4. They're going to go ahead and see what's around this corner. So they're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4. And now, if there's anything down this corner, the Zargon player would reveal it. So maybe he puts a block tile here, so we know there's nothing up past this corridor. And maybe there is another orc revealed right here. So the dwarf is moved, but now because there is a monster visible to him, he can't do a search for traps or a search for secret doors. Alright, we'll have the elf take their turn. They got a 5, so we'll have them go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they're going to do search for secret doors. So we'll say there is one, and the Zargon player places it right here. Alright, that's going to end their turn. So now it's the wizard's turn. We'll have the wizard roll. They get a 4, so they're going to go 1, 2, 3, and they're going to say, I'm opening this secret door. So now the wizard, the Zargon player, will reveal anything in that room. And so he places a closed door there, a chest there, and this abomination here, and we'll say that's the one that they're looking for, the monster goobly goo or whatever I said at the beginning. So he revealed that, and I think the wizard still had 1 more point of movement, so he will move in there, and he hasn't taken his action yet, so he's going to do that. Now, he can't search for treasure or traps or secret doors or anything like that because there is a monster in that room. He's going to cast a spell. So he's going to cast this ball of flame. The spell may be cast on 1 monster, enveloping it in a ball of fire, and inflicts 2 body points of damage. The monster then rolls 2 red dice. For each 5 or 6 rolled, the damage is reduced by 1 point. So he's casting it on this monster. It has 2 body points, and it gets to roll 3 defend dice. Well, no, it's not doing defend dice now because it's getting a spell cast on it. It's just rolling 2 red dice, and for each 5 or 6 rolled, it gets to block a point of damage. So it gets to block 1, so it takes 1 damage. It has 2 body points, so it takes 2 damage to kill it. I didn't talk about this in the overview. If a monster takes damage but not enough to kill it, you place however many damage tokens under it that it has taken. So in this case it took 1 point of damage, so we'll put 1 damage token under it like so. Alright, well that's the wizard's turn. So now it is the Zargon player's turn, and he does have monsters he can move and activate. So he'll go ahead and move his abomination. It has up to 6 movement it can do. It's just going to move 1. Well, it needs to take that damage token with it. Alright, and then it's going to attack the wizard. It gets 3 attack dice. So we will roll those. He got 2 hits. We see that the wizard, where's the wizard's card, gets 2 defend dice. So the wizard will, he blocks 1, so he took 2 damage, but he blocked 1 with that shield, so he's going to take 1 damage. So on the wizard's character sheet, you would mark where you track its body points that it has, he starts out with 4 body points, so you would mark that he's down to 3 body points. Alright, the Zargon player still has an orc that he hasn't moved or attacked with. We see that the orc has 8 movement, so he's going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he has to stop there, but then he's going to attack that dwarf. We'll see that the orc has 3 attack dice. He got 2 hits. The dwarf gets 2 defend dice. He blocks 1, so he would also take 1 point of damage. So you would write on his character sheet, update his body points to be whatever it was. He starts out with 7, so he would be down to 6. Alright, that's all the monsters that the Zargon player has on the board, so that would end his turn. And now we would go on to the hero player's turn. We'll do one more round, so it's the barbarian's turn. He's going to get in there and try to help fight that abomination. So he rolled a 9, so he can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then he's going to attack that abomination. Remember, the barbarian gets 3 attack dice. He just got 1 hit. The abomination gets 3 defend dice. He did roll 1 black shield, so that will block the 1 hit that he took. So he doesn't take any damage. Alright, it's the dwarf's turn. He's not going to move right now. He's going to attack first, so he's going to attack that orc. The dwarf, we see, just gets 2 attack dice, so he's going to roll his 2 attack dice. He got no hits, so the orc doesn't even have to try to defend. Now, the dwarf can move if he wants, and he's probably going to, but he only gets to move 5, so he's going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's going to retreat back this way. Alright, it's the elf's turn. We'll roll for the elf. They got a 12, so they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and come around this side of the abomination, and they're going to attack the abomination as well. They have 2 attack dice, so we'll roll their 2 attack dice. They got no hits, so the abomination doesn't even have to defend. We're back to the wizard's turn. He only has 1 attack dice, so he better try to cast a spell. He's going to try to cast Sleep on that abomination. This spell puts a monster into a deep sleep so it cannot move, attack, or defend itself. The spell can be broken at once or on a future turn by a monster rolling 1 red die for each of its mind points. If a 6 is rolled, the spell is broken. May not be used against mummies, zombies, or skeletons. So he gets to, let's look at his mind points. He gets 3, so he gets to roll 3 red dice, and if he gets a 6, he's not put to sleep. Gets 1 more. Alright, so he's asleep. So if another hero still had a turn, they could attack him and he couldn't defend himself. But that's the end of the hero's turn, so now we go back to the Zargon player's turn, and since this is the only monster he has, well, he's got 2 monsters available. Let's say he's going to move the orc first, so the orc has 8 movement, so he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he's going to attack the dwarf. We know the orc has 3 attack dice. Oh, he got 3 skulls. That's not good for the dwarf. The dwarf gets 2 defend dice. He blocks 2, so he will have to subtract 1 point from his body points. So he would be, he's down to 5 now. And now it's the abomination's turn. He's asleep, but because it says the spell can be broken at once or on a future turn, he gets to roll the 3 red dice again. And he did get a 6, so he's not asleep. So he does get to attack, and we'll say he's going to attack the wizard. So he gets, we know the abomination gets 3 attack dice. He got 1 hit, the wizard gets 2 defense dice, and he does defend it, so he doesn't take any damage. And now we would be back to the hero's turn again. But I think I'm going to wrap it up there. This video's already gone pretty long. I think I covered most everything. I just got this game for Christmas. You know, I've played the first 2 quests, so I haven't been playing this a long time. So hopefully I played everything right. Hopefully I played that sleep card right. As I said, the rules are kind of vague on some things, and when you look up on forums to get some clarification, some people do it some way, some people do it another way. There's a lot of house rules, so I think you just kind of have to do it, follow the rules to your best of your ability, and house rule something you think works better for you. But I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.